the nitty gritty, because we know today that actually executing prospecting in this day and age is getting harder and harder. So we're going to learn from two of the best out there, and just wanted to welcome you to this webinar today. My name is Shannon. I am head of events at Women in Sales and CEO at Pearl Advisors. And I have two amazing guests here where they're going to bring their years of knowledge and experience and tell you a little bit behind the scenes about some great products and strategies that you can actually use to execute. So I'm going to kick it over to you, Ashley. Would you mind introducing yourself for our audience?
Awesome. Perfect. Nice to join everyone today. I'm Ashley Federsell. I'm a director of new business sales here at ZoomInfo. And for those of you who don't know what ZoomInfo is, we are, the leader in go-to-market tools necessary to help grow your business, whether you're, small or large. We have the world's best data and intelligence to help find your net new prospects. So excited to join everyone today.
Fantastic. And I'm sure that data will come into our strategy here. Chandler, could you introduce yourself as well?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Chandler Ford. Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here. I've been in sales for about 8 years at this point. I've been at ZoomInfo for going on 2 years. In August, it'll actually be my 2 years on the small business team. I've been working under Ashley since March, but super excited for this topic. It's something that everyone in sales knows and loves. So excited to share some insight.
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive in. So I would love to start today on a really fun note. If you are like most people out there, you've got some memorable prospecting story. For some people, it's incredibly embarrassing. Other times it's something that you just laugh at, later. I wanted to turn it over to you both. Would you mind sharing what your most memorable prospecting story is?
Yeah, I can go first, Chandler. I know. There's so many, but I would say probably the most memorable was my second sales job out of college. I sold bottleless water coolers to businesses and went, kind of door to door. We did have some appointment setters. And so I drove about an hour away from the office to this mechanic shop. I go in, I say, I have an appointment with Gus, and the guy behind the counter starts laughing. And I was like, what's funny? And he goes, Gus is our cat. And I said, okay, well, does the cat need drinking water? I did get to talk to them, but yes, it was, a big joke that they accepted the meeting. But obviously we're not serious and or interested. And so, yes, that was probably my most memorable, is that I had a meeting with a cat.
I love that. Well, all living things need drinking water, so there was a chance, right?
We did not close the deal.
And it's really interesting to think about how cold prospecting might be different in person versus in this remote digital environment that we're working in today. So maybe we have some time to dive into that later too. Ashley, Chandler, do you have anything?
Yeah. So when I started in sales, it was my first job out of college. I was selling small business loans, and I was on an outbound team. So we were making upwards of 80, 100, 110 calls a day. And we didn't really have a lead source. We did a lot of mailers as advertisements. And honestly, that worked really well. But then we would literally go into our Salesforce and call accounts that had a business address and an HQ number. So we were looking for that owner, but we didn't have their name. So we would literally have to call the HQ numbers or those business lines and say, hi, is the business owner of XYZ Auto Parts available? And looking back, it was just the craziest thing. But I really cherish those days because, again, I was fresh out of college. I didn't know what I was doing, but it helped me so much and really helped me with being really tenacious. And I cherish those days so much. And some people would literally be like, excuse me. And other like, who are you calling for? You're calling here, but you don't even have a name. And others would just send you through with no questions. And it's just so wild to think back on, but I wouldn't change those memories at all because I think it helped me to be successful and really got me where I am today. So not a specific story, but just thinking back on that is wild compared to where we are today with everything that we can use when we are cold prospecting.
Absolutely. And that was about 8 years ago, right, Chandler?
Yes. Yep.
You think about how far we've come in 8 years from a data perspective and being able to gather the right data to make it really impactful. I always like to think about that pray and spray, that it no longer works. It might have at one point, and today it's harder and harder and harder. And I'm sure you guys have noticed that all of the talk on LinkedIn about cold calling and cold prospecting being dead. So my goal today is kind of to dispel that and just tell people how to make it successful. And one of the things that I think about when people are getting into sales and they are told that they need to cold prospect is the anxiety. I don't know if you've heard this or felt this yourself. Just the thought of picking up the phone and putting yourself out there and knowing that you're going to get rejected, probably more times than not. They get nervous. It's kind of one of those things that a lot of people, until you get over that hurdle, dread having to do. What advice would you give to people who think about prospecting and get really anxious? They get that pit in their stomach and think, oh, I really don't want to have to do this, but they know they need to do it to be successful.
I think the biggest thing is you just need to rip the Band-Aid off. And, there are some days you don't want to do it. It's not the most fun thing, but the worst thing that's going to happen is the person is going to say no, or you're going to get hung up on. And I just think, there's nothing to be nervous about, and that's easier said than done. But people get cold called all day, every day, especially when you're a CEO, a business owner, a CFO. Like, I get cold calls every day and I don't even own a business. So I think the main thing is just having a basic talk track ready to go. And with being in SaaS, I think it's more so we want to sell the meeting, not the product, because if you give too much up front, then people start asking questions. What's your price? What's your term? Definitely selling the meeting versus the product. And everyone is human, just trying to match that tone that the person is having. If they're having a bad day and you can tell, or they're in the middle of something, I usually just say, hey, I'll give you a call back at this time tomorrow. Does that work? And just make it a point to call back. So just really being strategic, and it's good to get those dials in, get the reps in, make a ton of calls, but just making them meaningful and making sure that you have some sort of plan. And then really just learning from failure. It's okay to fail. It's okay for people to say no. It's okay to get yelled at. And the most successful people in the world have failed time and time again. And I don't think it's any different for cold prospecting at all.
Such great advice. I love that. Pull the Band-Aid off and be human, right? Be authentic. Yep. You're talking to another person. People buy from people is the saying, and acknowledging the state that your recipient of the call is in. And maybe you can change their day, change their mood, lighten things. So you have that power as well. Yep. Ashley, anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, and that's funny, Chandler, that you said about the failing. One of my favorite motivational speeches is Fail Forward by Denzel Washington. And, he goes through it and how he, got turned down for a Broadway show when he was first starting out. And like, had he stopped there, he wouldn't be Denzel that we all know, and he kept pushing himself. And I tell my reps all the time, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because to Chandler's point, like, the worst that happens is somebody's going to say no, or they're going to yell at you. And you know what? That's on them. That is not a reflection of you. But also it's, don't be scared, because these prospects probably need what you're selling and they don't know about you. So it is, getting that opening that you're comfortable with, and maybe even, hey, I'm totally interrupting you out of the blue. This is a cold call, but my company helps with X. Do you have a couple minutes to chat through this? Have kind of that hook, whatever it is that you're selling that is going to resonate. Another thing that I think is helpful is it's definitely a mindset. So there's going to be days where, you're just getting no's all day long, and that can get frustrating. So it's, hey, get up, take a walk. And, sales is it's a mental game. It's a mental sport. And so if you go into that next call just feeling defeated, the prospect hears that. So it's whatever you can do to get yourself back into a positive mindset. I always would kind of like, hey, if I'm not having a good day, or if I am nervous or I'm new to this, like, go after maybe not the best fit prospects, like get your, get your training wheels on, and it doesn't matter if you fail at that call, because they're probably not going to buy. They're not a great fit. And another thing is is practice. Like, as silly as it is to role play or to like speak out loud, I think the more times that you can speak it or talk to your friends, family, the more comfortable you get when somebody answers that phone. But the biggest thing is just doing it. Once you do it and then you see success from it, then it's really just, like riding a bike.
Absolutely. And such great advice. I love the saying it out loud and practicing it. It does come out differently from our head when we actually speak it. And you hear a lot of people get tongue-tied and they are unable to stop and listen. So I always like to think about respond to what the person is saying rather than trying to go off of a script and trying to always have the same conversation. If you lead with curiosity, right, you will be able to uncover something on value and where you can help them.
I think also going back and just listening to your own cold calls, because when you hear yourself say things and you're like, oh my gosh, like, why would I say that? Or I sounded desperate. Like, those types of things really do help and yeah, I love practicing out loud. We still do role plays all the time, which are great. But when you actually hear yourself in the moment talking to an actual person, it goes such a long way, because you could just pick yourself apart, but in a good way.
Absolutely. And how have you guys taken and utilized not only listening, but the transcripts from your call? Are you doing anything as a team in order to analyze those transcripts and improve strategically?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, ZoomInfo, owns a product called Chorus that we sell. And so that is a call transcription software and, conversation intelligence tool. So it has a lot built into it where I can go in and, pull one of Chandler's calls and I can read through the transcript, but it'll also tell me, hey, here's where, competitors were mentioned, or Chandler asked, four really great open-ended questions. And so I can go through and look at that. It even takes it as far as, syncing it with our Salesforce to tell me if there's deals at risk with my organization. So, hey, Chandler has this opportunity that's, forecasted to close in 2 weeks, but she hasn't talked to anybody in 10 days. We don't have power on with us. And so I can easily identify which calls I want to go listen to. But to Chandler's point, it's, when you're in the moment, you think the call is going great. You don't realize what maybe you could have done differently. And then you go back and listen to yourself. And I remember, when I started here, even I had been in leadership for 5 years before, and I took a step back and I was an IC for a year. And I would go in and listen to some of my calls and be like, if I was coaching myself, I would rip myself apart. So it's really helpful to do that. But it's also, if you have access to listen to others that are doing really well, I always, recommend that as well, to see what you can pick up, go after people that probably have a similar, style as you in terms of like their personality. Even like, you don't want to go and listen to somebody that's going to use words and wording and have a completely different tone than you. But if you have people around you that are similar and they're succeeding and you're, either just starting out or you're wanting to get tips and tricks, if you can listen to others, like, it's one of my favorite parts of leadership is that I learn from my team all the time. Like, they are all very intelligent people. And so I'll hop from a call I'm on with Chandler to a call that I go to with the next person and use something that Chandler said, because I'm like, wow, that was brilliant. That was incredible. So always keep learning is, my motto.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And I have used Chorus in several roles and implemented Chorus in several of the chief revenue roles that I've had over the years. Such a great software. If you are not using a call recording software that uses AI, I always love the amount of time that I'm talking versus the prospecting, what, filler words you're using, all of the meat of kind of how I can fine tune and get better with each at bat. So that's great advice.
100%.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. So I'm getting so many great questions in the chat. Keep them coming. I promise we're going to save time at the end for questions. So please pop those in. We'll make sure that we get to as many as we can. But moving back on to cold prospecting with Ashley and Chandler, what are some of your favorite channels? So we talked a little bit about picking up the phone and calling, but what are some other channels that you use to leverage cold prospecting, and why have you found those to be effective?
I personally love, I like to do a three-touch approach. So send an email, make that phone call. Now we have technologies too where we can see if someone opened our email.
Mhm.
So if we're sending that cold email, with AI, I saw you're on our website or looking into, our services, and you see that they opened it 5 times, but they're not calling you or responding, like that's when I'm going to go call them and connect with them on LinkedIn, send them a LinkedIn message. So I think my favorite channel to leverage personally is calls. I find it a lot easier to pick up the phone and make a call versus, coming up with an email, and AI, of course, helps with that. But I also think that it's really easy for a CEO, a sales director that you're reaching out to, it's a really good fit company. You really tailored that email. It's really easy for them to say no or just not respond to that email. They could want to, but they could get busy. They're like, I'll come back to it, but a lot of the times they just don't. CEOs get, probably, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of emails per day. So by calling, I think it's way easier to address a rebuttal on the phone versus an email. So, even if you call someone, oh, the timing isn't right, then, there's certain things that you can say, or if it comes to pricing or terms, or I just think it's so much easier to give that rebuttal rather than you get an email response back, then you type it back to them. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, personally, I'm a big phone person. I like to make calls. I think it's just a lot easier and better to set meetings. And then, I mean, I love LinkedIn. I think that I don't remember 5, 6 years ago LinkedIn being so popular, but I literally use it as a social media feed now. I like to see, when people get promoted or posting about their family or their job, their maternity leave, whatever it might be. And then also using things from LinkedIn, maybe if we went to the same college, or if they were recently promoted, if they recently started at a new role but used to use Zoom Info and using all those things, I think it just can make that a lot more targeted and tailored when you are actually calling into these prospects.
Perfect. So two things you said there. It sounds like phone call first, LinkedIn and email are probably your three modes of contact. Did I get that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, fantastic. And I think something you hit on about LinkedIn was really key, which is the intent signals. So not only when they open an email, but also when they're changing jobs, have they been a past customer of
Hmm.
Zoom Info, and using those intent signals to trigger the outreach rather than this just cold. It makes it just a little bit warmer. They know who you are, they understand the value of what you deliver, and you
Yep,
can use that to build a rapport and to navigate your way into new accounts.
exactly. Yep.
Great. Ashley, from your perspective, anything that you
Yeah.
know?
Absolutely. I mean, Chandler, I have a lot of the same sentiments, and it's been a while since I've actually done the cold prospecting myself. But I would say with my team, I have reps with different levels of comfortability. I have the reps with different processes, and so that multi-touch approach, me personally, again to Chandler's point, like I just think it's way easier to overcome an objection, use your personality, make a joke, like build some rapport as quickly as you can on a phone call. But not everybody's going to answer the phone, right? I don't answer numbers that I don't know most of the time. And so I think that, I have reps that will send an email first, and then maybe the next day they're calling behind because it helps them open that conversation a little bit easier. Hey, I sent you an email yesterday. Did you get a chance to look at it? Helps kind of like break that true cold call. But I think, LinkedIn's a great social networking tool, and to be able to see some things that you have in common. And then obviously, big proponent of Zoom Info and the intelligence that it has with the intent, or, they hit your website, or they have that recent job change, got funding, whatever that trigger may be for it to be relevant. And then when you have the timing there and you're there to solve a problem, I mean, I think it's Gartner that says, like, you're the first vendor in the door when somebody needs a problem to be fixed. You're
Mhm.
74% more likely to walk out with that business,
Yeah.
whether you're the cheapest, the best, whatever. You just have to get there first. And so I think a lot of those signals can help with cold calling, because necessarily it's like not as cold. They don't know who you are, but it's still relevant, and they're more likely to, have time and be like, oh yeah, no, this is something I need done now, so let's schedule a call.
Absolutely. That intent, surfacing that intent is super important. And understanding where they are in the journey of trying to make a decision, because not everyone's going to come in, unknowledgeable. A lot of people have used other technology. Nowadays, there's, a million competitors just about for every technology out there. We're no longer at a feature and functionality war because it's easier to develop these days. So now it's about understanding where they are in their journey and hitting them at the right times, and understanding those insights and how they tie to the information that they need or want at that particular point. You mentioned something in there about, using those signals for cold calling and just making it a little bit warmer. I hear all these things on LinkedIn about, calling twice, calling 6 times in a day. I just look at that as annoying, and I get that happening too as well. Where people will call, I won't answer, and they'll call again, and I think it's a emergency at my children's school or something. What are some best practices that you have found for cold calling, not to annoy the prospect, but to really, really build that rapport so that they see you as an asset rather than an annoyance?
I think I think especially if you've built the rapport on the front end, I personally don't like to do that. I think that 3 calls in a day can be excessive, but I think something that is, nice about sales at ZoomInfo is a lot of the times we're selling to salespeople. So they get it. They probably do the same thing. And, if they don't, they know that it's something that can work. And I think if you have a good relationship with that person, if I am cold calling someone, haven't spoken to them, it's a new account, I won't do the double tap, just full transparency, that's just me. But if you do have that relationship built or that opportunity is in flight, again, we sell to salespeople, so they get it, they can relate, which is again a nice thing about selling at ZoomInfo.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree that the persona you're calling into and the type of prospects that you are targeting makes a difference in how you attack this.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think to echo that, if you are going to call multiple times of the day, make it strategic in terms of like, okay, I'm going to try them in the morning. Maybe then I'll try around lunch, hoping that they're free, and then maybe then I'm leaving a voicemail or I am sending a follow-up email, and then maybe at the end of the day, because those are probably the best times to catch people when they're not in meetings all day and they have maybe a little bit of time. But I think that if you call, you don't want to be a pest. So then you get some really relevant content in front of them, via that email. Maybe you even make a quick, like there's so many tools out there, make a quick video that just is like a 2-minute pitch. And I've gotten those through LinkedIn, through email, and I think it's a great way to kind of catch somebody's attention. We often will start on somebody's website. That way they don't think it's just a spam video. They see that it's, about their company. But if you have something useful that can help them, maybe then they're going to say, oh, great. Okay, that's who called. Now maybe I'll shoot an email back. Texting, I think that's more so though if you've already had a conversation with the person. I don't know. That's a great cold method of outreach, just sending a random text. But there are a lot more people, and me personally, I'd rather text somebody than spend time on the phone because I'm talking all day for work. So I think, it is kind of understanding your persona of who you're selling to, because there are, we all sell to salespeople, so that's a lot easier for us. But right before I came here, I sold to health information management personas and, pretty much like a medical librarian. And so very different persona to go after. They don't want to spend time on the phone. They're much better at communicating. I mean, my team had closed deals just through email because somebody didn't want to get on a call. So I think it is also just kind of knowing your audience as well.
Absolutely. That's incredibly important in speaking in language they understand, but also getting the information in ways that they prefer, because it is going to be different for every persona. So we've talked a couple of times about multiple touch points. So you talked about calling in the morning, calling in the afternoon, and maybe only after they don't answer the second time are you leaving a voice message. Have you guys been measuring as a team how many touch points on average, and it could be across all different channels, is it taking you to get the conversion? Is there an average you're seeing or best practices that you have in regards to how many touch points you need to do?
I would say 5 to 7 is kind of like industry agnostic standard. There's some where it's 10 to 15 touch points. I used to have a sign where it was like the most deals are won on like the 12th follow up, but most reps stop after the second. So there's when I was on the phones myself, selling, if I was especially like following up with somebody who I hadn't talked to in months, so it's kind of still like a cold call, like you're like, hey, has anything changed? It's like, it's your favorite pest again, like make a joke out of it. I'm not trying, until you tell me to kick rocks or, some not nice language, I'm going to continue to reach out because I think that I can help you solve, issues that we've talked about. But yeah, I would say 5 to 7 at a minimum. There are definitely times where you can get it on that first call, but it's kind of one of those things like, I would say after 10 to 15, okay, move on, but don't give up after the first or second outreach because they're busy. They may just not get back to you, right then. But if you call again or you send another note or whatever it is, they may be like, oh yeah, no, I really did want to talk to Chandler.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. I agree. It definitely takes multiple touch points and across those different channels that we talked about. I love the Vidyard example that you gave. I think that is great. And you think about what we talked about at the beginning, which was keeping it human. We are talking, we need to be empathetic. We need to understand we're catching them when they're not expecting our call and that they are in a state of mind that they're in and adapting to that and being able to address that, but also reminding them that the person reaching out to them is human and that we really do believe that we have something valuable to share with them. So I love videos, LinkedIn voice memos. If you haven't used that, that's a great tool on the mobile app, just to get a face, a voice in front of them partnered with your name as well. So great. The world has changed so much. I heard 8 years in sales. And Ashley, how long have you been in sales?
Oh my goodness. About 20 years in sales.
Okay. Yeah. I've been here around 24 years. And the difference between what worked 24 years ago and what prospecting was 24 years ago, first of all, there were no SDRs or BDRs. It was full cycle. You did your own prospecting. You were out there hunting. And seeing the entire process through. But just the way that we attack prospecting has changed so much. And I think really in the last 4-5 years, it's evolved, and even more so in the last 2. I would love your perspectives on what has changed and what is no longer working that even just a few years ago was working really well.
Yeah, I think back in the day, we had our Rolodex, but it was really a lot of pounding the pavement and getting out there. You didn't necessarily have all the technology to find the right people. And I think now it's like people are like, why are you just walking into my office? Like they don't want to be bothered.
That's if they're in an office, right?
True. That's the other thing is, the pandemic. I mean, I worked for a competitor of ZoomInfo for 8 years, but then I went to a small, it sold to the health, we sold outsourced medical billing and coding services. And pre-pandemic, they did everything via trade shows, referral based. In person was primarily how they did source their revenue. And honestly, they bought ZoomInfo 2 weeks before I got there because I probably would have said, hey, I can get you a great deal on where I came from. Once I used it, I said, okay, I understand why we lost business so much. But in 1 year, I mean, they were a 22-year-old family-run company for about 18 years straight. They did 7 and 9 million in revenue. No crazy growth years, not too much downturn. And in 1 year of implementing cold outreach, calling, emailing, and building out, an inside sales team, we did 16 million in revenue. I realized revenue cycle management was not necessarily my passion, but helping companies, build this out, especially smaller businesses that, where I came in and I was director of sales, but then I was building websites and marketing campaigns and sales operations. And you have to be able to do more with less. It is so different. I think companies also realize they can save a ton in travel expenses and mileage and everything from having people out on the road. But the biggest thing is there is, like you said earlier, Shannon, like there's just so much competition. And so if you don't have a way to understand like when your customers need you, or a way to like know when to reach out, it gets really, really difficult, and you're constantly losing because you're just too late to the game. So I think that that's another big thing, is the amount of intelligence that we have. While it may be a little scary sometimes with, Big Brother, it's, I could talk about something and next thing I'll have a Google ad pop up for whatever we were talking about. But it is very, very helpful, especially when, you are solving a problem. People will want to talk to you versus just like, okay, I get a million cold calls a day. You have to make sure you're relevant.
Absolutely. So how important is the message that you are sharing when you're cold prospecting? And then how have you guys thought about fine-tuning, refining that message to make sure that it really resonates?
I think that kind of going back to, like I mentioned, having that basic talk track, but when you are cold calling or even emailing, you have to be able to adjust on the fly. So not every conversation is going to be so different. So just being able to, think on your feet, where if someone gives you a crazy response, or, you'll even have people be like, all right, tell me in 10 seconds what you do. But I think that it has to be very relatable to them, because you're not just going to call someone and say, hey, this is ZoomInfo, this is what we do. Do you want to have a meeting? It needs to relate back to them. And that's where I think that even that research that comes into play before making that call on LinkedIn or using their ZoomInfo company page through our platform just helps so much. Because again, if it is a new VP of sales, they're looking to grow their sales team, or if this new VP of sales comes from a current client, like those are the best things to bring up, in my opinion, along with that basic talk track. But I do think, again, you have to be able to think on the spot, and again, every single call is different, so tailoring it to these people. And when you say research or do your research before the call, it takes 2 seconds, just see if there's anything going on within that company, looking at their LinkedIn, looking at their company page on ZoomInfo, if they received funding, and just being able to take these little tidbits and incorporate that. And there's just so much more information out there now. So if you're not using it, it's like you're gonna fall behind. And
Yeah.
Ashley and I are both in new business, so we have new demos, all the time. And a lot of the times as people come in and they say, like you mentioned, Shannon, it's just that spray and pray approach that they're trying, and it's just not getting them anywhere. So, when we're calling too, it's that same sentiment. It just doesn't work anymore. You need to have those signals and be relatable.
Absolutely. Great advice.
Yeah, I think short and sweet, get the hook and tell them why you can help them. For us, if it's truly cold, but we can see that they're looking into, sales tools or sales intelligence and things like that, we may take a screenshot of intent and say, hey, here's 50 companies that right now are shopping for, commercial cleaning services, right? If that's the type of company that we're going after, making it super relevant for them. Do you have 5 minutes to connect to see how we can get this into your hands? Just super relatable. If you're doing that on the phone, same thing. Hey, I work with a lot of companies in X industry. Here's how I can help you. And do you have time to chat? Like, it's just setting that hook, but making it, people aren't going to read a, 5-paragraph email anymore. And so it's, what can you do to capture their attention, get what they need? I mean, we live in the world of Amazon, right? Like, I purposely buy things on Amazon because I don't have to put my credit card in. It's here in 2 days, and like, people want things now. So I think that's another really important thing, is to make your messaging concise but very relevant, and helping them solve an issue or have something that they're gonna need or want, because that's where those alerts are coming from, and bring that up. Hey, I just saw that you moved to XYZ company, or congrats on your promotion. ZoomInfo now has an AI emailer that helps with the death of the first draft, we call it, right? It's like, instead of staring at that blank screen, what it spits out may not be perfect, and I can still edit it and add, and I can even change the tone, whatever it is, but it definitely helps from an efficiency perspective. And I'm not in marketing, I'm in sales. And so having that as a tool, I'm sure many are using ChatGPT. I think that these are all really helpful solutions just to help give yourself ideas on how to do things outside of your norm.
Absolutely. And I think you and Chandler both hit on something, which is if you are not harnessing the technology that's out there today in ways to make you more efficient and to lessen the administrative load that every SDR, BDR, AE out there has to do, then you're going to be left behind, right? Because your competitors are. So make sure that you're taking and harnessing everything at your fingertips. And if you need to advocate for new technology internally or go out and find things yourself, that's definitely a path that I'm seeing a lot of people in sales doing right now, just to keep up and to ensure that they're using their time most efficiently. They can spend time in strategic ways that they need to.
Mm-hmm.
So when you give, and this question I think is specifically for you, Ashley, when you give a new account to someone on your team, are you finding any tricks or tips that are working for them to really break into a new account? I know you guys are doing all new business, so I imagine that you're doing this quite often. What have you found are the best ways? And we've talked about some of these, I believe, but I'd love to hear them again. Is it relevancy to what they're doing? Is it value? Is it multiple stakeholders within an account? What's working best right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all of the above that you just said. Honestly, no one way is the right way. But I think especially, so I have 4 teams under me, so I have about 32 reps, and like I said, they're all here and on my team because they are great at what they do. And so a lot for me is collaboration and sharing what's working for different individuals, so that we have weekly huddles, and I'm sharing email templates or snippets of people doing cold calls, or actually, on the demo closing opportunities, so that they can get, hey, I'm going to pick something up that Chandler said today, and I'm going to try that. But I think that the most, especially in my org where I have account executives, so most of their day is demoing and trying to close deals, but they're still not really probably going to hit their number unless they self-source some of their own opportunities. And so a lot of times it's just doing it. It is them committing to putting the time into getting out there and making calls. And sometimes if they're struggling, I'll say, okay, let's pivot to a different industry. Like, let's go after, you've closed, 5 deals in the last 3 months in this industry. Why don't we get you on that path? I think that's another thing, especially for a company like ZoomInfo, who can sell to any company that sells to other businesses. Pick a lane and stick with it for a while, because then you can really refine those talk tracks. You're having conversations where, oh yeah, I just spoke to somebody that brought that up. So I think, kind of harnessing in on what it does that look like for you. And if it's size of company or, like everybody's got things done differently, and some people only sell to a specific industry. But another big thing is, again, going back to, like, if it's not working one day, it doesn't mean that it is never going to work. Yep. Be coachable, ask your peers, ask your leadership, hey, can you listen to a couple of my calls that I had? Is there anything that I could do differently? And, for me, more minds is better. I don't know everything. I don't want everybody to be me, and I know they can't be me. So let's figure out what works for you and pull that out. So it definitely is a little bit different for everybody. I've got reps doing all different things, but I think it's finding what works for them.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of it is personality and how you work. And Chandler, this is a question for you. How do you make sure that you dedicate time every day to prospecting? I've seen a lot of different, advice in this area. Just doing it sometimes is really hard. It's kind of, how do you get started? And there's always priorities that are going to compete, especially if they're less intimidating than cold outbounding.
Right.
Any advice you have?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm the type of person that I will block off my calendar for an hour to sit there and dedicate time to prospecting. Not on a crazy busy day, but if there's, if maybe it's a little bit lighter, sometimes a Monday can be like that. I will set aside time, and that way it's on my calendar. I'm making sure that I'm doing it. I'll set, okay, I have to make, at least 30, at least 40 calls just within this hour. So, I mean, really for me, it's just scheduling and time management. And some days do get busy and you can't do it, but I think it all comes back to holding yourself accountable and making sure that you're doing it, because like Ashley mentioned, those one or two extra self-prospected deals per month are really what make the difference. So it's just something that you have to consistently be doing, and just really holding yourself accountable and setting goals for yourself, whether that's, I want to set 3 or 4 meetings this week, or by the end of the month, I want to have 15, 20. It just depends. And it's whatever works for everyone in terms of those numbers and when you can actually allocate that time. But also, as Ashley was mentioning, kind of that time of day, I think is a big thing too. And, when you want to get people on the phone, try them in the morning, or I think there's some statistics saying that 4 p.m. is the best time to cold call. So if it is a later day, that's when I'll go in and set that up on my calendar to make those calls. So it's all about that time management and just making sure that you're doing it and putting all distractions aside.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. So blocking time off of your calendar, so it's a non-negotiable. It's there. It's
Yeah.
just like any other meeting, and you need to adhere to it. The other thing that I've seen work really well in sales is gamification. And I find myself doing this with myself. Hey, if I complete these 20 calls, then I'm going to go walk around the block, or I'm going to do this.
Yep.
Like, giving myself reason, I think, and holding myself accountable to those things. By the end of the week, I want to have talked to this number of people. And if so, then this is what's going to happen. So that's also helpful. Ashley,
Yeah.
anything to add to that you've seen work well on the team?
Yeah, no, I think again, it is, some people will block the time. Others may, take time at night to get, okay, I'm going to build out who I want to call. I'm going to like plan it, and then they can come in and just do it first thing in the morning, or if there's time between, but they get prepared the night before, because then it's very easy to go in and, dial down a list of companies that you want to reach out to. Some may even like schedule emails to go out, right? With all the technology, you've got the ability to say, okay, I'm going to get emails out to these 50 people, but send them tomorrow at, 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. so they go to the top of the inbox. But yeah, I mean, again, it is just really like that commitment and discipline to get organized, which I know sometimes is not easy. So the easiest way is to put some time on your calendar, and it's like, okay, here it is. And have somebody to keep you accountable, whether that's your manager or just like a buddy. Like, hey, did you do your prospecting? Or that, like the gamification, I would almost like set up a contest between another rep on my team. Like, hey, let's see who can book more meetings today, and I'll run spiffs and stuff if we're focused on prospecting or things like that. Like the first person to book a meeting gets, a Starbucks gift card or something like that. So I do also love the gamification. Like, give me some kind of incentive. We're in sales, we're competitive, we like to win, and so whatever that you can put in front of me to make me want to be motivated, that's always going to help.
Yeah. And I want to pull out one thing you said, and I think you touched on this too, Chandler, which is knowing your numbers, knowing how many calls you need to make, how often those convert, and really being able to hold yourself accountable and understanding what those numbers are to hit your goals. And I think that's also incredibly important, and not something that we've talked a lot about today, but doing a deep dive and keeping track of how many outbound calls it takes to convert to one meeting and how those convert through your sales pipeline is also really important at an individual level. And I'm sure, Ashley, you're doing a lot of that behind the scenes through your CRM and through the other technology you have. But knowing those numbers intimately as a seller really enables you to control your destiny. You know how much you have to put in order to get what you need out of the system.
Yep.
So,
And
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say it's something as silly. I have sticky notes on my desk, and I'll say, book at least 3 meetings this week, and then you go cross it off. It's silly, but it's just right there in front of you, and it's just another way to hold you accountable and be like, okay, now it's Wednesday and I haven't booked any meetings, like got to get to it. So just those little things really help too.
Isn't it amazing how much we as humans like to cross things off of a
Yeah.
list?
I
You feel
know.
so accomplished.
Yes.
I've been known to put
Yes.
things on the list just so I could cross them off. Even
Yeah.
if they weren't that's really on the list. It's that reinforcement. So I
Yep.
want to make sure we leave time because I've got so many great questions. Again, if you have questions that you would like me to ask our panelists today, please, please, please put them in the chat. We'll get to as many as possible. But I want to end with a section on, we talked a little bit about AI. We talked about some of the AI capabilities that ZoomInfo has. I would love to understand, you guys are in the forefront of developing these capabilities. Where do you see AI continuing to evolve the future of sales? Love your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think it just, where we've gone, ZoomInfo has had the intelligence piece for a long time, the intent data, and I can see who's on the website and, the scoops, the funding rounds. AI is bringing it all together to really make it so easy to log in. You have almost like an Instagram feed. Here's that 10% of your market that probably is ready to buy right now, and here's why. Here's a button to call them. Here's a button. We'll even start the email draft for you. And the calling even will bring up talking points. I mean, at this point, we're pulling in data like, hey, Shannon, you just hosted the Women in Sales webinar, and I can bring that up because it'll pop up in front of me. So really making it a lot easier. It's like if you've got the personality for sales, now it's, hey, we're giving you almost everything that you could ask for. And if you can talk and, build that rapport and give people a reason to buy, we've got all the reasons in the world and the information that you need. I think the future, I don't think we can ever replace human relationships in selling, but I think it can be helpful to help automate some of the process of getting people interested and having the ability to, like, at the click of a button, have all these amazing thoughts pop up because you ask, one question in there, and now here's all that information. Even the AI that's pulling in, it's pulling in your first party data from your CRM. And if I have a meeting to hop on with Chandler, we have no time to connect. In ZoomInfo, I can say, like, help me prepare for this meeting. And it spits out, here's your key decision makers. Here's their challenges. Here's what they're solving for. Here's like what's already been discussed. And so within 5 minutes, I'm prepped for this meeting, and I didn't, have to go in blind because I didn't have time to meet with Chandler before we got on that call.
Amazing. So really serving up all the information that you need to be relevant and be strategic in one place at your fingertips with AI, and really thinking about AI as an assistant, a co-pilot, or a co-worker, if you will, to augment what you're doing, but not being fearful that it's going to replace you, because humans still do ultimately, I believe, want to buy from humans.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I agree with you, and I'm excited to see what you guys are building.
I think too, for me, it's so hard to even know what could happen, because 5 years ago, like, we would have never imagined that anything that we do, and that, Ashley and I are lucky enough to work at a company that uses so much AI and makes it really easy to know who to reach out to and why. But I mean, something that I would personally like to see, if anyone has any ideas in terms of AI, would be, if you're on a call live and you're saying, okay, I'm going to send you the agreement for $16,000, let's say, for example, that it could be updated real time in our Salesforce. And I just think that there's certain things like that where that could take us. Again, I don't know if that's possible. That's not my expertise, but I think that things like that would be really cool. And that's really where AI could take us, or even call listenings in real time. So when you have a call, you're waiting for feedback from your manager on how the call went, just being able to say, what did I do well in this call, or what were the missed opportunities immediately after, to provide that real-time coaching would also be really helpful. But again, these are just a few of my ideas, so we'll see.
Yeah,
but
there are a lot of AI coaches popping up there that are ingesting transcripts and helping people navigate the conversation. So I think that's not even a future thing. I think that's a reality right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I promised our audience that we would get to some questions. So I'm going to dive into a couple. Thank you for all those who have submitted great questions. So we touched on earlier about being discouraged in sales. It is, you get a lot of no's. You get some people hanging up on you or who are just really outright rude, not because of you, because they've had a bad day. Not taking it personally, I think is really important. But somebody wrote in and said, I'm getting no response via email or LinkedIn emails. I'm feeling really discouraged. What advice do you have?
Yeah, so I think LinkedIn's again a great social selling tool. The biggest issue is that with InMail, you send a message and you sit there and you go, please reply. And for a while here at ZoomInfo, I managed solely our talent product, so like to all recruiting shops. And one of the statistics that stood out to me was there's 65 million adult profiles on LinkedIn. Of that, 23% log in monthly, meaning they log in at least one time a month. And of that 23%, 80% of them are sales, marketing, and recruiting professionals. We're all looking for our next customer, our next candidate. And so if your persona isn't active on LinkedIn, I think the top like 94% of IT talent has their InMail turned off. I know that I get, InMails all the time and I don't necessarily read them. So I think LinkedIn is great for connecting. I post all the time on there. I there's a lot of relevant content and being able to connect with people. From an email perspective, I think it is getting the messaging right. So again, depending on what your product or solution is keeping it short and sweet, and getting that hook. But the biggest thing probably is going to be to, cold calling will never die. As much as people think it may, I think that, getting somebody on the phone, and to Chandler's point before, is like being able to overcome those objections and in real time, like convince somebody versus try to convince them in an email. And then the other part is just that like multi-touch. But sales is a numbers game. And if you look at even just like close percentages, it's like 10 to 20% is, industry agnostic. If I talk to 100 people, I may close 10 of them. So that means 90 are going to say no, or they're not going to answer me. And so that's something to just be okay with, and then set those small, okay, if I'm going to reach out to 50 people today, I hope that I can get 5 replies or 5 conversations. So it's really helping with that. And then from an email perspective, there could be all sorts of different reasons, whether it's your subject line, you're you're going to spam. So there's a lot of different things that can play into factor there. I will say, since we switched from the sequencing and kind of the mass emailing to the Copilot emailer, internally and externally from our clients, we've seen, I think the one case study we have, it was like a 39% increase in response rates.
Wow.
Because it's more hyper tailored and personalized to the person that you're reaching out to versus just some generic messaging. I think that can also help. And Yahoo, Google, Apple, they all kind of came out with even more stringent spam criteria last January. And so I think a lot of people are just getting stuck in, the messages and getting delivered.
Well, 39% is huge. I mean, I think any of us would say, yes, tell me more about that. And I think this probably answers the next question I have, but let me know if there's anything to add to it. How is ZoomInfo implementing AI, and how can we leverage that to expand, automate our efforts without losing that personalization of manual emailing?
Yep. And so that's where with the Copilot emailer, it's not kind of an automation of like, hey, if this happens, go ahead and shoot an email out. It allows you to take, whether you're, building out a search or you're using those signals on your homepage, you can do up to 25 people at a time and it'll still send personalized. But instead of wasting 10, 15 minutes trying to figure out that email or taking and copying, pasting a template, it pulls the trigger in. So if I'm on my homepage and it's like, hey, a new VP of sales just started at this company and they're actively researching, solutions like sales intelligence, sales leads, prospecting, you can click a button to say like, pull those in and it's going to personalize that. Like, congrats on your new position as a new revenue leader. Building the business is probably your number one goal, and here's how we can help. Would you have time to discuss? Still have your eyes on it, but you click one button to send. So it does. When we did our our Copilot test of about 20,000 of our existing clients that were testing it out, they were saving on average 10 hours a week more than what they were saving with regular ZoomInfo, which is already a time saver. So being able to kind of just harness that all together and have the email ready to go, the call, just click a button, make it a lot easier to do that.
That's amazing. Yeah, those numbers really speak for themselves. So this next person got really smart, and they want us to give feedback on their existing strategy with ZoomInfo. So I'd love to hear what you guys think. So the new strategy that this participant has is automatic email sends to ZoomInfo leads through setting up workflows. Then they're calling those who open the message and using that as warm-up leads. They're allowed 100 AI messages a day. And they want to know if you have any improvements in that strategy.
So I think that that's a fantastic strategy. There are the ability with the AI emailer to set up to 5 follow-ups as well that would be automated to go out. So that way, if you send that first email out and the person doesn't answer, you could say 3 days later, send this email. And if they respond, obviously the technology is smart enough to remove them so that they're not getting 4 other emails when they've already booked a meeting with you. But I think that is, I have one rep in particular that has almost that exact same strategy. She sends an email. She kind of keeps things, she's very spreadsheet happy. She likes to put things in a spreadsheet and color code them.
Oh, don't say that. We're still talking about spreadsheets, all this technology, but yes, it's true.
Yes, and she doesn't have to do it that way because it is all in ZoomInfo. But then she'll pick up the phone and call when she gets the alert that they've opened the email. The other thing she will add is she will go and connect with them on LinkedIn. So again, they see that connection request, they see a name, now the email's coming through. But I do think that is a good strategy, and then adding, calling in if you more than one time, right? That 5 to 7 attempts, and also reaching out to different stakeholders in the organization is always, multi-threading is always going to be key. And not just focus on, oftentimes, yes, the C-level may make the decision, but you've got to build your champions where they're feeling the pain. And so making sure that you're reaching out to different personas.
Absolutely. And remembering that those personas respond differently and have different responsibilities. So your messaging is going to have to be tweaked based on who you're calling into. So this has been so much fun. Ashley, Chandler, thank you so much. I think the things that I'm taking away from this are that consistency is key, right? It's calling every week and ripping off that Band-Aid. I love how you said that earlier on, just to know that you got to do it. And the quicker you get into it, the more comfortable you're going to get. The more times that you practice saying it out loud is really important. Calling until they tell you they aren't interested. I love that, Ashley. And sometimes that can be a verbal, hey, I'm not interested. Sometimes that can be 15 touch points and you never hear back from them, right? Mm-hmm. Ignoring is the same as telling me you're not interested a lot of times. And then I think finally, remembering that you're engaging with humans, right? We all want that connection. We all want to build rapport. And I think that's why cold calling still works, right? Hearing the inflection, the tone, the cadence of another person on the phone and being able to respond in real time to what they're telling us. So many great pointers today. I'm really excited for this conversation. So thank you very much. Just to recap, we've got information on ZoomInfo in the chat. Please check it out. So many amazing AI-enabled products that are really helping making cold prospecting more, able to be accomplished in quick time. And then please, if you are not a member of Women in Sales, we'd love to have you. We have 35,000 people around the world in the community and 7,000 active in our Slack channel. So please check us out. It's free to join and we'd love you to be here. But finally, thank you so much, Chandler. Thank you so much, Ashley. I enjoyed our conversation and look forward to talking again soon.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you,
Thanks so much.
everyone. And feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn if you do have any questions or want to have a conversation around ZoomInfo. We'd be happy to help, or any other prospecting tips or tricks.
Absolutely.
Thank you.